Chapter 2. What time is it? It's dark. Dark as it gets. Shadows cling to jagged rocks like a living mist, thick and damp like a primordial soup, and Rose is floating in it. How long has she been here? The fathomless sea of dormancy. But she can still sleep, smother herself in it. Memories echo in faint glimpses. A laugh, tears, giggles. All of them are transient and immaterial, ebbing and flowing. She forgets them as soon as she sees them, but she does not forget the pain that comes with the white face. There is a thrumming beneath her, and yet darkness still. It's dark, dark as it gets. Shadows cling to jagged rocks like a living mist, and through it, permeated by something blue and glowing. It comes closer. Closer. It flutters and lands on her nose, and her eyes open. As they do, becoming more conscious, Rose sucks in air and attempts to feel all over her body for the wounds that she had received. The lingering anger and desperation still remain, though diluted due to whatever time has passed. She attempts to look around to get some bearings and figure out what has just happened. She breathes, feeling something lodged in her chest. It's the dagger. But the expecting ache from having it in her does not come. The rest of her wounds are absent. All that remains is a silvery sheen where the attack left its mark. It seems she's been asleep for some time, but it does not take her long for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. She's in a chamber of sorts, thick stone lines the walls. As for her, she is submerged in dried white roses in a deep bed. No, it's not a bed, too hard and wooden and coffin-like. This is a burial chamber. As she sits up, she looks around this resting place she's been given. Why is the knife still in her chest? What's going on? Of course, they would bury her in roses, but is there an immediate exit? She needs to find out what happened to Hughes. Rose begins rummaging around the petals, looking for something. She finds something glassy and fragile. It's a vial. Something that once looked like it had silver ribbon wrapped around it, but it's tattered and porous, almost like it had been a snack for moths. There's a tag. Well, there was. There's a piece of flaky paper left. The rest seems to have crumbled away. Noting that there is no immediate exit, Rose attempts to fly up to the ceiling to see if it lends any clues. However, as her heels lift off the ground, she's dragged back down by gravity, seemingly lost her innate ability to fly. Rose rummages for more hidden things in the coffin. There's a stiff, brittle envelope. It might have been for something celebratory, once. It crumbles like a winter leaf as soon as she picks it up. Her fingertips continue to brush against petal and paper until they find purchase on something more immediately familiar to her senses. Hugging hempen comfort in the dead of night, lulling her to sleep, she finds the Hughes doll nestled deep inside the coffin. She sighs. Well, that about sums it up. Can't fly, paper's old as shit, no way out of here. She looks around again before looking down at the Hughes doll. How the fuck do I get out of here? She squeezes the doll. Dust shakes off the doll as it whirs to life from its long slumber. Shacked up in the king's bedchambers, did you? Stupid. Even though it's a pre-recorded soundbite, the blunt lack of empathy could be felt. You tried feeling about for some bookshelves and hidden doors? The message makes her slightly sad, still unsure of his fate. However, she rises and begins looking around the chamber, with the dagger still firmly, but painlessly, implanted into her chest. She begins to feel around for any cracks or indentation in the walls. On the third wall, she brushes over a sunken surface. It feels like the indentation of the palm of a hand. Firstly, she grasps the dagger by the hilt, attempting to slide it out. For a moment, there is discomfort, but it slides out, clean and butter smooth. Holding the dagger aside for the moment, she presses her hand onto the wall. The groove fits her hand like a glove. Warmth emanates from the palm, and blue glowing lines shoot outwards, like circuitry, until it encompasses the entire chamber. Next to her, a small compartment slides open from the wall, revealing an empty hole. It, too, glows blue, and seems like a small item would fit in. It's surprisingly less alien than it is comforting. in some strange familiar way. In the blue glow, she can see the words etched above the compartment, the celestial word for tribute. Rose looks down at the dagger before placing it into the hole. Whoever put me in here didn't want me leaving easily, or perhaps didn't want anyone getting in easily. As she places the dagger in the compartment and removes her hand, the stone compartment slides closed like a sarcophagus. The chamber still thrums blue with celestial light. Even the white roses has taken on an ethereal sheen. It's at this point that she notices something fluttering in the air, the same blue glow that woke her from her slumber. It floats and lands on the top of the doll's head. Noting this, Rose squeezes the doll once more. Could something strange be at play here? As she squeezes the doll, the same voice line from before rings out. "Hi, I'm Hughes. Go fuck yourself." She sighs with a smile. "You hear that, Butterfly? Hughes says to go fuck yourself. That's how he says hello." She looks around, wondering where these are coming from anyway. After a moment, her eyes turn back to the butterfly. "Are you here to show me the way?" As she asks this, a choir of voices reverberate from her heart. "That, and more. Chosen, risen from eternity's stupor. What is your heart's desire?" the voice asks. This leaves no question in Rose's mind. This is a voice she's heard before. From her deity, the voice of order. Rose is taken aback by the booming voice that feels like it's travelling through her. She adjusts her tone and attitude a little, especially given she did just pass on the words of Hughes. She looks down, wondering what to say. "I just want to go back to simpler times, with Hughes and my friends, when I didn't have as much overwhelming attention and responsibility. I just want him to be okay." She clenches her fist. "And if I can't have that, then I want revenge on that changeling motherfucker who took him from me." The butterfly flips its wings slowly as if lamenting her burdens. "The tree. Seek it, and you will find guidance." The voice booms. "The day of your birth approaches. Blessings be upon you." The blue butterfly flutters once more, slower and slower, before its glow fades and disintegrates into a pale dust on top of the doll. The chamber continues to thrum, growing louder and louder, until the sound dies down. The compartment slides open to reveal the dagger, now glowing white and blue with radiant energy. Rose groans. "The day of my birth, I don't like the sound of that." As she takes the dagger, looking around to see if anything else has changed, she looks down at the dagger again. "What am I supposed to do with this now?" she says, clearly frustrated. Upon removal of the dagger, a thread-thin line cracks in the wall. Then another. Then another. Dim light floods the entire chamber through the cracks, along with the scent of wet soil and pine. It smells of outside. Placing a hand upon the wall to push it open, she hesitates slightly before doing so. With the other hand, she looks down to Hugh's doll, worrying what the outcome is going to be. "How much is this going to suck, Hughes?" she squeezes the doll, asking ironically. However, unlike previous times, the doll does not stir to life. Instead, it just says, "How the fuck should I know, Peanut? I just woke up." These voice lines seem entirely organic. "Me too, Hughes," she says before double-taking at the strangely specific and natural-sounding line. Could she be losing her mind? Gotta ask a question that couldn't possibly have a pre-recorded message. "Do you remember the fucker who stabbed us?" If this is an accurate response, Rose is prepared to be very worried. "Oh, we carked it, did we?" the doll says. "But you look hale and healthy to me, apart from that slit in your chest. This ain't some new age piercing phase you're trying out, is it?" Rose pauses for a moment. "Are you aware you're the doll you gave to me on my birthday?" she says nervously. "The fuck kind of question is that? I have eyes, stupid." The doll seems to waggle in indignation. "But you've got a hiccup there. I'm not your dad. I'm a doll." Rose's head is spinning from everything going on, and now to this. She wonders if she's just hallucinating with some sort of resurrection sickness. Sighing and shaking her head, she pushes open the wall and steps out into the wilds once more. Sunlight floods her eyes as she pushes her weight against the wall, and she has to wince both in exertion and in the face of the light in order to make her way out. Rock grates against rock as the wall slides open, but there it is, as she steps into the rock outside. fresh air, the skies, and a breeze on her face. But it is not as she remembers it. The heavens blaze amber and green. Below the rock, swampy bogs greet her, waterlogging the ground to such an extent that even the air is permeated with the stench of the ocean. Wetlands are not all that common in Irem or Grad. This much she knows. And that too was certainly not in Irem. It takes her no more than a second to realize that it was not the sunlight contending with her eyesight, but the glow of a titanic tree above her, though it feels diminutive to call it a tree. Ambrosial gold flows through its branches and tendrils. She is nowhere near its centre, perhaps 100 miles away at a glance. Even so, the branches tower over her just the same, encompassing this landmass as far as the eye can see. "That's new," she says as she looks around in all directions, trying to get a grasp of anything that might feel familiar, but to no avail. Everything is so strange, many questions unanswered. Rose begins talking to herself as she begins walking towards the world-sized tree. "Well, go to the tree," they said. "Find guidance there," they said. Here I was wondering if that was also going to be some cryptic to be solved, but I think that's the one. She looks down to the Hughes doll again, feeling sad and filled with the dread of uncertainty. "I hope you're alive. I hope any of them are alive. I don't want to be alone." The doll does not respond. Out of inability or lack of words, she cannot say. But it wasn't like the genuine article said much during these times either. Hopping off the rock, her shoes squelch and sink into the spongy mud, and she can immediately tell this is going to be a trek. Despite the occasional vibrant patch of green here and there, the soupy mist, buzzing insects, and smell of peat are, frankly, making this a bit of an unpleasant journey. Quickly she finds out the consequences of laying dormant for such a lengthy amount of time as her legs begin to ache 30 minutes into the walk. Still, her steps are careful and measured, managing to avoid sinking too deeply into the hidden pockets of marshy water. The doll squeaks from the grasp of her hand. "Absolutely being a bother here, but can't you hoist me a little higher? It smells of ass down here, and I can feel my buttons rotting away." Rose doesn't look down at the doll, because at this moment it's distracting her from wondering whether or not he's trapped in it, or his personality has been transferred to it. Either way, she needs to know if Hughes is still alive, and talking to the doll makes her feel like that's going to be an obvious no. However, there are many questions she wants answered. She doubts the doll has said answers, but she's curious enough to ask anyway. "Do you know why I lost my ability to fly?" The doll sighs. "Did you now? Well, there goes your potential basketball career. How should I know?" Rose can practically imagine his non-committal shrug. "Maybe the sugar daddy in the sky decided to stop giving you the sugar. Are you going to put me higher or what?" Rose loves and hates that it's a one-to-one version of Hughes. It'll make do in the event that he's not here, but you can't really prank a doll. At his request, she nots the locket she wears from her younger years containing small drawings of Rose and her two dads. Creating the knot allows the doll to hang as if it's being carried under arms, laying firmly on the stab mark on her chest. "Get used to the stink," she says. "It's going to be a long..." Wait a minute, can you even smell? The doll pauses and thought, Yes. I'm as breathable a fabric as they come, even without a nose. Shit, I could catch sepsis with a little dunk. Nice view, by the way," the doll says as it sways left and right on her chest. "If you're ever worried about getting laid, I'm a surefire virgin protector from where I'm hanging," the doll cackles out in laughter. "Keep going the way you're going and you'll be going for a permanent swim in the swamp water," Rose says in mild jest, continuing the trudge onwards. Though she is weak, she pushes on for as long as she's able. It's a swamp, so it's unlikely that there's going to be anything natural here that's good for eating, but she keeps an eye out anyway, as well as a rock for some rest. The Hughes doll does not respond, letting her keep an eye out for food during the trek as she sloshes through the swamp. She goes about an hour before she sees a few stalks of immature cattails and some watercress sticking out of the deeper part of the bog. Feeling the drain, Rose quickly heads over and collects whatever wild forage she can sustain herself on. It's likely nothing more than a light smack, but calories seem like they'll be in short supply at the moment. As she does, something stops her in her tracks. Her senses hone in despite the circumstances of her situation. A distant vibration in the water. In the reeds just over the way, a giant lizard has eyed her presence. Rose holds the dagger, attempting to hide away while approaching closer to get some semblance of an ambush. Meat, she whispers to herself, mouth dry. A killing blow would save a lot of trouble right now. The body does not forget easily, especially a skill honed from adolescence. She crouches down and slinks into the reeds. Easy come, easy go, just like her father taught her. Soon, she's invisible. The giant lizard, having lost sight of her, seems to be stirring from its position. Rose finds good vantage behind a tall tree stump. Finding her moment to climb it, jump from it, and land a brutal blow in the back of the neck with the freshly attuned dagger. As the lizard kicks back from the impact, Rose jumps off, slashing downward to cut a major artery in the neck and land the killing blow. Whew, still got it. Feel a lot weaker though. The doll whistles at her first blood. Looks like you gotta get some jogging shoes back on. Not complaining at the show though. Eat shit, you overgrown gecko. But did lizards always screech out when they collapse? Not any that she's hunted, at any rate. As its body collapsed into the water with a splash, the commotion seems to have brought another lizard to the fray. This one hisses a sonorous war cry at Rose before it lunges. During the commotion, it seems like Hughes casts something. A strange feat for a doll, but a welcome one. The surprise of another lizard catches Rose off guard as she's bitten pretty heavily. However, thanks to Hughes' doll casting something, the lizard seemed to be a little slower. Rose finds herself up against the same tree stump she leaped from for the first kill, as the second lizard threatens to consume her and the tree. Thankfully, she's able to duck out the way and use the dagger to pin the lizard to the tree, through the top of its head. With a final struggle, the body goes limp. The green swamp is stained with blood, and it's difficult to tell where hers begins and ends. Her thigh is freshly punctured, but now both giant lizards lie dead, and fresh for butchering. I already hate this place. Let's get to carving, Rose says as she looks up to the sky to gauge what time it might be before she starts skinning these lizards looking for meat. And even obscured by the gigantic tree above her, there is some semblance of sun above its canopy. By her approximation, the time will be melding into the early evening soon. She reckons that there will be still some light afforded to her by the tree at night. Taking her dagger and getting to work. With her base knowledge of hunting, she manages to free both lizards of their skin in one piece, as well as their meat. As much as she can take, anyway. Good eating in those lizards, the doll says as she gets to work. They'll spoil in a day unless you dry 'em good, though. Rose manages to find a drier patch of land and an elevated outcrop in the swamp, upon which she chips off some dry wood with her dagger. There's no tinderbox in the area, so it takes her a while before she spots a convenient piece of flint. Once she gets the fire going, she gets the awaited lizard barbecue. It smells like chicken. No, of course it does. As she sits by the fire, she turns to the doll. I'll struggle to dry them in an environment like this. I could maybe cook a handful. Wonder if I could get a couple of days' worth. She pauses. So, do you have his memories? She asks the doll. Hughes sits quiet for a moment before replying. Yep, that's all I have in my cotton filling. A lot of it, though, whatever he's told me over the past 2 years. Rose perks up at the mention of past time. 2 years? What do you mean? Well, I was his dirty little secret project, the doll responds. Filled me to bursting with pre-recorded messages over the past 2 years, every small and shitty little detail he could think of. Your other dad helped with that. He was still pushing shit into me like a backed-up drain, up until the day I was handed over to you. Rose does smirk at this, with the idea of Hughes just throwing one-liners at this doll for 2 years and Gideon tirelessly adding enchantments to it. I see. Rose trails off. Seems that actually answers less questions than she'd hoped for. Ending her rest by eating as much as she can without getting too full, given last time that happened, she got shanked. Rose packs up as much meat as she's able to, before continuing the trek onwards. She puts out the fire and continues towards the tree. The sun has already set beneath the canopy now, though even after hours of hiking, the heavens do not grow suffocatingly dark. Illuminated by the tree, this land seems to be perpetually dim. Still, she feels the coldness setting into her bones as the evening sinks in. It would not do to be out here much longer. Eventually, swampland melds into a forgivingly dry patch of land, a sight for sore feet and her waterlogged footwear. And even better as she spies in the dark something that seems like an outright mirage of dreams, an abandoned campsite. A boon from the gods, it feels, dry, firm land and a campsite. Approaching slowly to ensure it is abandoned, Rose keeps her footsteps light, giving it a reasonably wide berth to ensure any occupants do not notice her presence. But from any angle, she can tell the campsite is devoid of life. Approaching it, the campsite seems to be in disarray. Dirt and mud lays astray around the place, in the long cold campfire, in the metal pot above it, and on the bedroll. Nobody has touched this for a while, but a couple of things are still perfectly serviceable. A clothesline is tied between two trees in questionable structural integrity, and a bag lies on the trunk of a tree next to a woodcutting axe. Rose begins to head into the campsite, investigating everything it has to offer, hanging the meats to dry and searching the surroundings. How curious, it's like this was set up for someone just to stumble upon. I'm not complaining, though, she says out loud. The campsite, though abandoned, is a godsend for someone of her circumstances. Aside from the iron shovel and axe, both in grimy but usable condition, she also finds a tipped-over wooden box filled with loose tea leaves. Half of its contents have made peace with the mud, but the rest is salvageable. If she brushed the dirt off the bedroll, she could sleep in it fine. The leather backpack next to the tree contains a mess kit, tinderbox, 5 torches, an empty water skin, and 5 days' worth of rations, in a limiting variety of pemmican and hardtack. There's also about 50 feet of hempen rope strapped to its side, though it is frayed and seems to have seen its fair share of use. Rose turns to the doll. Who the fuck left all this here? It was you, right? Thanks, she says sarcastically. Hughes responds, Sure, ignoring the complete lack of sugar and beehives in the immediate vicinity, it was definitely me. You're welcome. By the way, he says, just as she's about to step into something squishy and soft, watch out for that alligator dung. Rose sighs heavily. Damn it all, looking at the mess on her footwear. Well aware that the meat will spoil, she takes the axe and Rose gathers some firewood and tries to smoke the meat in hopes that it might preserve it a little longer. It's painful to think just how long these rations have been sitting here, but waste not, want not. As she looks down at her soiled shoes, she spots something brown, flat and torn under the dirt, and looks to be something made out of cotton. This place is just full of surprises. What's this then? Rose reaches down to pick up the item. As she brushes the dirt away from the canvas and brush, it's not an item, but the remains of a torn tent covered in debris by some sort of scuffle. Bulging out from the flattened tent is a small book, just as damp and tattered as the tent. Weather-beaten and crock-trampled as it is, a few scant pages remain legible. The cover has a curious sigil on it that she does not recognize. Inside, the book reads, Ere the orate sophist's birth, the shepherd roamed the lands. For water they drank the wisdom of Manna, for bread they partook in the words of the people, and so they became they the one who listened, the changer of ways. The shepherd hearkened the cries of Manna, that she would be torn asunder by the poison in her soil, that which we knew herein as lay. And said Manna, in a great and fearful clamour, the poison in me grows stronger, and to hold the lands together becomes impossible. And upon hearing this, the shepherd mediated into the fate that awaited her. When the skin of Manna was cracked by the lines of lay, rendering her lands into pieces 7-fold, the shepherd approached the locus of the sundering, where it began, and threw themselves into the abyss of lay, and they said, I give myself to the land, that my body shall knit its wounds together, and that my blood may provide succour and heal it. And from the body of the shepherd sprung a sapling, gold as sunset and superlative in size. Its gilded roots grew expeditiously between the sundered land, knitting the lands back together like a scab. From its burrows golden water rained down and nourished the fearful people, and upon this the people rejoiced. The shepherd continued to guide in their new form, wise are they in the way of the land, and thus they were reborn as the orate sophist. Rose gets her wits about her as she reads the book. Big tree, nature-themed book, big swamp. Got it, I'll keep a hold of this just in case it's useful somewhere later. The doll scoffs at this. What, so you can join the Tree Huggers Club? Miss me with that. Actually, that'd come with a few perks. I'd do more than just hugging. It pauses for a second. Shit, that thing is bright as tits. How is anybody supposed to sleep in this dump? Rose turns to answer. Well, first of all, you dingus, I'm keeping it for information. Unless you know where or when we are, having anything we can use to find answers will do as well. She looks to the tree, squinting her eyes as she does. This sun tree. I'm hoping the tent will provide enough shade, otherwise I'm going to have to triple layer it to black it out. Hughes laughs at this. Whatever it is, at least you know the curtain makers are eating good. What is that anyway? He gestures towards the book. Some hippie druid's diary? She opens the book gently to see if any of the other pages actually still exist. Not sure. It seems pretty damp, so I'm not sure if anything would actually be legible. It seems Mana is mentioned here, so we are on the same plane at least. If this tome has anything to hint at, something has happened since I've died. She turns to look at the tree. Enough time has passed for this thing to grow, at least. Rose stares off into the distance, contemplatively for a few moments before tears start forming at the eventual loss of hope that anyone she knows is still around. The doll takes note of this. Oi, are you crying? Why are you crying? Stop it. Stop crying. The doll sounds a little bewildered at this emotional development. Rose tries to ignore the doll, but hearing the voice just makes it worse. She stands, pacing around while trying to set up the tent and cover any tattered areas to block as much light. As soon as she can, she'll eat, lay down, and rest. But the doll is insistent. Have you seen the crap wizards can do? They could shit out a tree like that in 2 weeks, easy peasy. The doll seems to be spitting out anything it can think of in an agitated frenzy. Dragons can kick up out for ages. And elves live fucking forever. Rose bites back at this. We only knew half-elves, Hughes, please, I appreciate it, but trying to give me hope isn't helping right now. Just let me be. Rose doesn't comment on the dragons, it's something she's already thought of, but is unsure how best to go about it until later. The doll becomes silent as Rose paces around the camp. You still have me, it finally offers. I'm well aware, Rose says, and I'm thankful to still have your voice to guide me and keep me calm. It would be a much more terrible experience without you here. Rose thinks to herself, even if he is just a doll with a personality, she's still not sure how much of him is actually in there, but at least it sounds and acts like him enough to give her some comfort. The doll responds. Ditto. The words are barely audible above the crackling of the campfire. Afterwards, Rose does a quick scout around the perimeter of the camp, making sure it's safe to sleep for the night. As she does, the doll calls out, Before you settle down, put me at the foot of the tent. Rose turns around in question. Why? You want to be on watch? But what if something happens to you? The doll responds, I don't need to sleep. Yes, that absolutely hurt to say, by the way. But if a crocodile came about, I'd sure like to know about it. Or are we not doing that anymore? Rose can't really deny the benefits of having eyes on watch that don't need rest, but the concern she has for losing potentially the last connection she had to her old life is a risk she overthinks. Eventually she comes to the conclusion to tie a rope to her arm and to the doll. That way if anything tries to snatch it, or something happens, she'll also be alerted. Is it too tight? Can you even feel it? I hope this is a decent compromise. The doll is sitting by the tattered flaps of the tent. Could be tighter for my kinks. Which is code for it's tight enough. All right, Rose responds. There's a long pause, something she's not said in quite some time, and it feels additionally strange to say it to a doll. But she is now aware this might be her last chance. I love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. The doll doesn't respond for a few seconds, but even with the physical hues, this is something that she's used to. All that's missing is a head pat before it says, Sleep tight, Peanut. Try as she might, the night did not pass without tossing and turning. Brief moments where sleep seemed apparent, only to open her eyes and discover it was as dim as it was when she went to sleep. The minutes stretch into hours and back to minutes and back to hours in a painfully long cycle. Before she wakes up, the smell of rotten eggs on her tongue from a swamp stench. It's morning again. Groaning as she wakes up from the uncomfortable sleep. Back is sore, eyes are hurting, joints ache, mouth tastes like shit. Gods, maybe staying dead would have been preferable, she thinks. She rises gently before tugging on Hughes as a prank. Morning. You get up to much? She asks sarcastically. The doll mutters some obscenities under his breath. You get any sleep? He asks. Rose does some air quotes as she says, I rested at a stretch. Enough to, I don't know if feel better even really fits, but my feet hurt less, so enough energy to walk some more. Good enough, the doll chuckles. That's all you'll be doing today, by the looks of that tree. Get some lizard and water in you, and let's get going. I'll shrivel up if I have to swell one more day of swamp ass. So, you've got a sense of smell, huh? Rose says. That's unfortunate. I did have another idea while I was dozing. Your suggestion to put you on watch. I could tie you around my waist and have you watching behind to keep an eye out on anything sneaking up to me. Hopefully my swamp ass won't be too off-putting for you. She sets about getting some food and water prepared to get her morning energy started. The doll hums at her suggestion. You missing some skin-to-skin contact, little peanut? Kinda gross, but sure. I'd rather chill out in a flap in your newly purloined backpack, though, unless you're going to wear that on your chest instead. Setting up her pack, Rose finds a way to have Hughes's doll head poking out of the pack in a secured space, allowing him to watch from behind. That also works, although less fun. She spends a few extra minutes packing up the camp as much as possible so she can take with her what will be useful before continuing onwards. Rose begins the hike immediately. It takes some time to make any progress, and progress is slow as she comes across a large cavern. The drop is monumental, and the collapsed bridge doesn't give any sign of security. She looks to this and speaks out loud. I miss flying. Attempting to scale down it using the rope she previously found, she slips and cuts herself, only to stabilize herself at the bottom as she catches her breath. This is hell, and I'm being tested, she says out loud to the doll, who offers no response as she continues climbing the cliff face. It takes more time and energy than she already has, but as she surfaces, she takes a deep breath, successful in her climb. Rose doubles over, sucking air out not from only the exhaustion, but from the lengthy, swampy walk to get here. I take it back. I want followers. Give me the power of flight. I never want to do that again. A barely audible tuck can be heard from the backpack. You'd let Caradoc suck your tits for business class treatment, huh? It sounds primarily in jest. You're fine, it says, always being one for faint praise. You made it out in one piece. Rose responds to this. I'd let a lot of people suck my tits for a lot of things right now. But yes, climbing down was certainly a throwback to my younger years, though I'm older now and I don't miss it. As she's gathering herself, there's an impish, mischievous hum coming from the backpack. 40 now, right? Rose immediately deflects. I'm not counting. After recovering from the climb and cleaning up her wounds as best as she can, she continues her trek on towards the tree. As she steps away from the cliff, she feels solid ground of wood underneath her. Even under murky swamp water, it shimmers gold and amber. A trick of the light, or does the tree's roots really extend so far away? She makes her way further into the lower parts of the swamp for about 10 more minutes, batting away flies and watching her ground, before she hears something in the distance, the sound of something thrashing in the water, and high-pitched screaming. Stay away! Stay back! Brother? Anyone? Help! Rose turns her head so fast she might have gotten whiplash. Social activity! Rose makes her way towards the noise as quickly as she can. I'm coming, hold on! Rose legs it through the swamp as quickly as she can, which proves tiresome even with the shallower waters compared to her earlier walk. Cutting through the trees and stagnant pools, she eventually reaches the source of the commotion. In front of her is a diminutive goblin girl seeking refuge on top of a dead tree and holding on for dear life. In front of her is an agitated crocodile, who's surely only trying to reach her about her wagon's extended warranty. With the croc having full attention on the goblin, Rose attempts to sneak up as quietly as possible, jumping out and attempting to lunge for the throat. The rightfully affronted crocodile turns its attention away from the tree and rears its head towards Rose, snapping at her with ravenous energy. However, she dodges sideways away from the jaws of the murder lizard, the goblin still gathering her wits. Upon removing the dagger from the croc's throat and hearing Hughes shout something probably colourful and orcish at the crocodile, Rose attempts to dodge sideways in anticipation of the next bite, but misjudges it and ends up getting bitten fully on her torso. In retaliation to this, the doll barks out some arcane words in retaliation. Release! Despite this not working, Rose thankfully still has her stabbing arm free, flipping the dagger round and jamming it into the soft underside of the crocodile's throat, landing a lethal blow. Upon being gently released from the death grip of the jaws, Rose stumbles forward onto the firmest ground she can find before releasing a solitary pained "Fuck!" The goblin is practically sobbing as she scampers down the tree and runs to Rose. "Are you okay, pretty lady? I'm sorry, it's all because of me." She thrusts a glass vial into her face. "Hurry and drink this." The assertiveness of the gobble makes her act without thinking. She takes the vial, half out of it after being turned into a bowl of Nestle Crunch, and pops the vial and drinks the contents. "But Gideon, I don't like broccoli." As she gulps the orange contents, whatever it is, it tastes like tumor moss and king's blood and whatever those gritty rocks are, but it doesn't feel like her liver is at risk of falling out anymore. "Did it help?" She looks at Rose's lack of constitution and sweats. Maybe not." Her ears droop at the sight of her. "Can you stand at least?" Knees shaking slightly, Rose hobbles to her feet, out of breath. "Yeah, I'll live. Thank you." Rose takes a deep suck-in of air, puffing her chest out before deep exhaling. Turning to the gobble as the first sign of life that can actually communicate, she blurts out, "What year is it? I know it's a silly question, but I need to know." The goblin seems confused by the question. "Huh? Did the croc bite your head too hard, pretty lady?" The question is genuine, but she detracts as soon as she can see Rose's serious expression. Which calendar? There's two. Terrian or Lumian?" She looks like a kindergartner who's just been asked what 2 times 7 is. Rose pauses at that. There was only one calendar as far as she remembered, the Terrian calendar. She answers, "I know, it sounds silly, I've forgotten what year it is. Terrian, please." She calms herself to seem less crazy. The small goblin starts counting on her fingers. "Okay, it's, 460? No, 5, 6... 760, the 11th of mid-year." There's a pause before the doll speaks from the backpack. 760? That's 300 years. There's no humour in this remark. Rose goes silent, staring at, through, or past the goblin, just full contemplating for a moment. She decides it's best to get more information if she can. "I'm not from around here. This Lumian calendar. What's the date there? And do you know why it started? I'm sorry for all the questions. I know we were just attacked, but it's best to know, what day is it here locally?" The young goblin thinks as she wipes the streaks of tears off of her cheeks. Would you like to come with me to the village? I could answer your questions while we go, because, well, it looks like your spleen's about to fall out." Rose Snap responds with an obvious lie. "I've never been better. But yes, please lead me to the village. I'd like a place to exist that's not a swamp." Straightening herself up, Rose starts hobbling alongside the goblin. "Okay, thank you for saving me, pretty lady. I thought I was going to die." The young goblin looks at her with wide-eyed gratefulness. My name's Prolm. What's your name?" Rose takes a second to think. Does she really want to answer with her real name? If people still know of her, it'll fast-track to her getting swarmed again. On the other hand, flying? "Rose," eventually she answers. "Nice to meet you, Prolm." She smiles through the pain. The young goblin pauses in thought before grinning. "Rose? That's a nice name. Did your parents like flowers? My favourite one's the spider lily." As if realising herself, she stops. "Oh, sorry. I'll talk to you on the way back. It's friendly crocodile season, and that's when the crocs come out. My brother says it's when they get friendly with each other, whatever that means." With a little sense of urgency, Prolm leads Rose away from the swamp, wading through the waters as she does, but this time looking both directions. The waters are practically at her chest height. It's a wonder how she got here by herself. When they both eventually reach drier land, Prolm continues to talk. The calendars, right? There's a Lumian calendar. I think it's now the 2nd of Wheelsun. I don't know why it started, and it's confusing to keep track of both, but the people in the white robes like it when you use it. They get kind of angry otherwise. Rose tries her best to not seem totally clueless as she nods along slightly, but can't help to question when there's something she doesn't understand. "White robes? I don't think those people exist where I'm from." She leaves it open-ended rather than pressing for information. She allows Prolm to follow up or talk as much as she wants to. Prolm turns with a smile. "You don't sound like you're from Kelna. The white robes people sometimes come to our village and ask if we want to join their church. They're called the She scrunches up her face. Illumi something? They seem like nice people, but the elder doesn't like them very much. That would seem to imply that they're in Kelna. Disregarding that, it seems like the little goblin is having a tough time pronouncing Oriate. Rose chuckles slightly at this. No, I'm not from Kelna. I'm from very far away and somehow just appeared here. It's very confusing. She doesn't mention further about the church. She'll hold on to that and ask someone who's likely more well-versed when it comes to the current timeline, period, politics, religion, and happenings in the world. Though an organisation traversing to recruit into a church doesn't sound very friendly. Prome responds, seemingly intrigued by her evasive, mysterious background. Oh, where are you from then, Miss Rose? She ponders for a moment. Would her answer here cause trouble in the future? A happy little goblin girl telling these white-robed people about someone who just randomly appeared from Grad? I'm from Cartha City. She decides it's better to answer honestly to save keeping track of lies later. Prome turns around, looking like she's biting her lip. Oh, I guess it's fine. You saved me, right? So you must be one of the good people from Grad. Rose seems a tad confused. Well, I have not been home in a very, very long time, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. Have the Gradian people become wicked? Looks like she might have to avoid using that after all. Prome, climbing over a fallen tree trunk, speaks out. Yes, they fought the people here. They killed our ancestors. But they haven't done that in a while. Rose grimaces slightly. I see. There was a battle. I'm sorry to hear about your ancestors, but I'm much more for helping people than hurting them, so you don't need to worry. That's good then, Prome smiles, taking your words at face value. The goblin walks a little further up before her eyes light up. Oh, we're close now. Just up this little hump here, and... Rose lets out a sigh of relief, thankful that it wasn't going to be days upon days of walking to get to where she needed to go, especially now that she's feeling the pain from the day's travel and combat. Glad to hear it. Let's get going. Following along Prome's enthusiasm as she follows her into civilization, the little goblin leads her up a steep incline, down some more pools and through some trees. Despite being very close, it's still 10 more minutes until there's any hint of civilized construction. Meanwhile, Prome is climbing across every vine and rock like a spider. You'd think she'd trained for this. They reach a maze of trees, crowding around them like errant bamboo forest. The goblin weaves through this with ease, while taking her by the hand. As they near the end, finding their foot on a wooden bridge, they see a gigantic, moss-covered tree surrounded by houses on the most perilous game of Jenga ladders you've ever seen. Prome turns around, throwing her arms wide and open with a fond smile on her face. Welcome to the Marsha Maras.